The following organizations have provided funding for this Into the Outdoors series.
I got 2 eyes to see the light. I got my ears to hear the night. I got my voice so I can sing. I got 2 arms to use like wings.
Come on, let's go. Wait until you see all the wildlife here. It's a bird watcher's paradise.
Oh yeah, especially with all the migratory birds that come through here each fall.
Uh-oh. Sounds like some of the waterfowl might leave this place in a cooler. I thought you said this place was a refuge.
Well, I thought it was too. Let's go check this out.
My motto is, if you want answers, you go to the expert.
So the first thing we discovered about Horicon Marsh is that part of it's managed by the Fish and Wildlife Service and is a national wildlife refuge for the protection of waterfowl. So there's no hunting there. Another part of the marsh, the State Wildlife Area, is managed by the Department of Natural Resources for multiple uses. That includes hunting. To better understand how hunting plays a role in all this, let's explore the history of hunting in North America. Native Americans were the first to harvest the abundant wildlife throughout the nation. But when waves of European settlers spread across the landscape, some began market hunting. This uncontrolled slaughter of wild game had devastating impacts on some wildlife populations. Take the American bison, for instance. Would you believe that when Lewis and Clark explored the West, an estimated 60 million bison roamed the plains? But the combination of market hunting and slaughter by the Army reduced the bison almost to the point of extinction by the late 1800s. Then there was the passenger pigeon. Once the most abundant bird in North America, they numbered in the billions and darkened the sky. It seemed impossible that unregulated market hunting could hurt a wildlife population that size, right? Ugh, wrong. Someone shot the last wild bird in 1901, and the sole survivor died in the Cincinnati Zoo in 1914. From billions to extinction in less than 100 years. Who would have imagined?
So we want to make it clear that market hunting was something where it was a mass slaughter of wildlife throughout the year, any species. Nowadays, because of conservation, we have strict regulations on hunting seasons, and those seasons actually help us manage wildlife populations, so we never have anything like that happen again.
Hunting refuge, refuge hunting. It looks like you got conflicting uses there. How did you manage them both?
So the Horicon Marsh State Wildlife Area is managed for everyone to enjoy. Although we get a large part of our funding from hunters and trappers and folks that fish, but we manage this property not only for the people that are out there recreationally, but also for the wildlife. Because if you manage for the wildlife and the habitat, then you are making sure that you are providing great things for any user that wants to be out there. Most people don't realize that hunters fund about $800 million every year towards conservation efforts across the country. So hunting really does 2 things. Number one, we get a lot of money from hunting, trapping, fishing licenses that helps pay for the management and the good work that we can do on wildlife areas. And that's not just for hunters and trappers and folks that are fishing, that's for everybody to enjoy. If you enjoy hiking or wildlife watching, birding, kayaking, and you're in a state wildlife area or a national wildlife refuge, that money does good things for all the wildlife. The other thing that hunting does is it helps us to manage populations that are out there. If we have excess muskrat populations on Horicon Marsh, for example, we use trappers to help us manage those populations. Same thing with deer in heavily areas. It helps us to regulate some of the deer that are doing damage to the landscape across the board.
So it sounds like hunters really help maintain biodiversity and healthy ecosystems.
Absolutely, they're super important to us. We as managers, we're trying to provide good habitat for everything out there, and hunters can really help us in those game species, making sure that those populations don't get out of control, or making sure that we're doing a good job of keeping those populations safe and steady so that we don't ever run into issues with extinct species again. So in fact, if you do a little bit of online research, you'll learn that deer, elk, and even black bear are on a 100-year high across the country. So let me ask you this question. Who wins when hunters and other people who enjoy being outside get involved with wildlife and habitat management?
Is it everybody?
Absolutely.
It's not just everybody, right? All the species on planet Earth benefit from what we do.